When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
What is Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, that sounds like a simple enough introduction, but sometimes I don't realise the technical complications that went into it. Was about 10:47. It's now 11:02. It's taken us 15 to get a really technical. So something that we do twice a week here, and somehow we still struggle with it. I don't. People at home don't need to know that, but in a way they do need to know that this is not a slick technical operation that goes into bringing. This is not anything to do with Gary Lineker. This doesn't happen when Gary Lineker does a pod.
I can imagine not. No. He's got 12 people in the room with him, to be fair.
That's what I mean. Gary Lineker's he's not getting all hot under the collar because it keeps going down. A little pink bar came up saying something wrong with my WAV. I don't know what my WAV is. And all I mean, Kieran, we can't keep going on like this. It's 4 games in a row now, 4 pods in a row that we've followed winning performances for our teams.
It's very weird, yes. And I should say a big special hello to the small group of Fulham fans who tried to be reenacting a scene from Peaky Blinders, wearing their little caps and trying to be a little bit hard on Saturday afternoon after the match, much to the complete bemusement and bewilderment not only of the Brighton fans but the Fulham fans around them as well.
Well, you want to say it's the same with those Millwall fans, Kieran. You want to point out to them. You do know where Peaky Blinders is set. It's set quite a long way from both South London and West London. So why those middle class Fulham fans dressing like Peaky Blinders? It's just that they get so angry. I don't know if you've ever seen a small Yorkshire Terrier, Kieran, on a table getting so cross it barks itself off the table. That's what that little group of wannabe hooligan Fulham fans are like. It's just they're getting cross because everyone's laughing at them. They probably haven't done their homework. They're worried about that. The public school they clearly originate from would be cross for them when they get back to school on Monday. We're going down. This is a different podcast.
Yeah,
this is a serious BBC pod about it. It's questions day, Kieran. We've got some cracking questions as usual. The first one comes from Luke Anderton. I thought I knew the answer to this off straight away, Kieran, but now I'm wondering. Luke Anderson says, do commentators, co-commentators and pundits get paid overtime when games go to extra time and penalties? I mean, it might explain why Alan McCoy does get so excited when he says things like, I don't want this game to end. I want this game to go on till midnight because he's going to be on the clock.
Exactly. I contacted the secret Jamie Carragher.
It's about time we had one of those.
Yes. And he said, no chance at all. And he did.
Of course not, I know.
The programme is for a fixed length of time, so I do recall occasionally having to miss the start of the 10 o'clock news during the World Cup and so on. But if you're getting the chance to be at a football match, the pundits do a good job. There's no doubt about it. But they're not on it per minute.
Yeah, their money's all contractually sorted out, regardless of the length of the game. I won't mention any names here, Kieran, but back in the day when I first started broadcasting, there were certain commentators and pundits who were furious if games went on too long because it ate into their box time. Because both before and after a game, they would do a little trip to the box to throw a couple of catchphrases in to excited fans. They do 10 minutes a box, tell a couple of stories, sign a couple of things, put the envelope in the back pocket and move on. And they didn't like games going on because that meant they might do 2 or 3 boxes less. But it's a cheery idea though. That I don't know why I keep saying Ali McCoy. He's a lovely chap, but just the idea that he's so pleased it's going to penalties because he's on time and a half. Now, Rodri Rowland has a question that brought back some happy memories, Kieran. Because Rodri says, thinking about going to games in the past and getting a programme, players listed at the back were usually sponsored by a local company, especially in the lower leagues. Is there anything stopping a club paying a player a lower nominal wage that would fall within FFP and then getting a company to sponsor that player to bump up their pay? And the reason it brings back happy memories, Kieran, is that back in the day, a little group of 4 of us, all of whom you know, we sponsored Gary Stebbings shorts. And it cost us the grand sum of £25 a season each. So Gary Stebbings shorts went for £100. And the little caption where they put the name of the sponsor was so small they couldn't get all our names in. Right. So the one lad whose name wasn't included, because once the programme template's on, they're not going to change the names for Gary Stebbings shorts on a weekly basis. So he was furious. His £25 was up the wall. The rest of us, is the only reason we bought a programme, is to see our names associated with Gary Stebbings shorts. But it's an interesting question, Kieran. Again, it's another ingenious way of trying to get around FFP.
Did you get the shorts at the end of the season?
I don't think that was an option, Kieran, and I think it's probably one we wouldn't have taken up, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure how we would have got around sharing the shorts out, really. Although he wasn't the hardest working player going, so they wouldn't have needed much of a watch. It would have been, back in those days, it probably would have been the same pair of shorts.
I can imagine.
Every week as well, anyway. Actually, we should have given them to Roy. It was Roy's name that wasn't included. That would have been a little gift for him. Here, Roy, you can have Gary Stebbings shorts, put them in a frame in your toilet.
I just see those popping along to Antiques Roadshow in another 10 or 20 years. And
do you think? Yeah. Just explaining to Fiona Bruce that what I had in my bag was Gary Stebbings shorts. Yeah. I've often thought about meeting Fiona Bruce, Kieran. That's not one of the circumstances in which I've imagined, to be perfectly honest.
Right. But back to Rodri's original question.
Yes, as quickly as possible, please, I think, Kieran.
I am certainly aware of players who have been contracted to be employees, normally at a company which is owned by the club owner, and at the same time receive a sum from the club. This is to, especially if he's sort of a Charlie Big Potatoes type of player who's perhaps come in from a higher. And what you don't want to do is to upset the existing dressing room. So yes, I've spoken to one or two ex-players who have been in non-league, and on the back of that, they've effectively had two earnings. It's a bit like that edition of The Sopranos when they were all employed by a construction company because they had an influence over the Teamsters union. So in order to avoid strikes, Tony Soprano and the rest of the crew from the Bada Bing were also on the payroll of the construction company, and they turn up once a week or once a fortnight, effectively for no-show jobs, to pick up their salary and then go home. So yes, it does happen. Can't name the clubs, but I can assure you, It is. It has been part of the game. Can't say it's part of the game these days, of course. Don't want to cast any nasturtiums at anybody, but I'm aware that it is something which is a historic element of football.
Did you say cast nasturtiums?
I think I did.
Kieran? Well done, good man. I'm very pleased with you. How far up the league could you go doing this, Kieran, before the authorities began to get a bit suspicious? I mean, presumably you couldn't get away with this in Miami with Lionel Messi, for example, could you?
No, but if you take a look at the charges which have been levelled against Manchester City by the Premier League, one of those charges, or one of the clutch of those charges, is that Roberto Mancini, when he was the coach of Manchester City, he was also being paid for doing 4 days coaching in Abu Dhabi for £2 million a year. So you enter a blurry set of scenarios here. Is this somebody? Because if Roberto Mancini's put that into his tax return, he's done nothing wrong. If he's got a contract of employment or a contract for services by both entities, again, you could argue that the clubs have done nothing wrong, and so on. But it does have implications for the cost control rules. So where does intellectual property end? And in terms of having a contract with a sponsor, or the owner's company as a sponsor, and so on, where does that end? And effectively being paid off book start? It's a tricky one. And having spoken to some sports lawyers, especially employment lawyers, they say, well, you'd really have to take a look at the small print. It would be it will be a challenging one to prove, which is partly the reason why we're into the second week in March. And the Manchester City case ended, 3.5, 4 months ago now, and we're no closer to getting a resolution.
Well, especially as another deadline, Kieran, that we were absolutely promised by several high-profile people in the game last week, that last Friday was the day that the decision was going to come, and it's Friday came and went, no decision, which just again plays into the hands of those conspiracy theorists who say they already know, but they're trying to do a deal so both sides come out of it with some dignity. When do you? I mean, Kev, do you have any serious indication of when you think it might happen, Kieran, or even any kind of professional guessing indication?
No. There is. Everybody is tight-lipped. Everybody's being very professional, and you would expect that to be the case. That's from both sides. I'm sure that if something was being hinted at, I've certainly been put on standby by broadcasters on more than one occasion when they hear whispers. But it's very easy to create a rumour, especially with modern day social media and communications devices. So I've become quite jaundiced because I've actually done a show called Football on Trial, another podcast with BBC, and this one's hosted by Clive Myrie, who is a massive Manchester City fan, and so that's now gone out. And our very good friend of the show, Nick DeMarco, he's on the same episode as me, and I've been again put on standby for the resurrection of the show when the verdict comes out. I suspect the Baroness has already says I'm packing my bags that week, a bit wildly, and I'll see her in due course.
One of the episodes of Have I Got News For You, the show that I write on, that we look forward to most, is when Clive Myrie hosts it, who's a delightful man, but a very serious journalist. It's one of the great pleasures in life to see Clive Myrie confronted with a joke that's either very rude or very satirical, that he says, I can't possibly say this. And then he does say it, and he just cracks up when he gets the chance.
Brilliant.
And he delivers it so well that there's always a 3-second pause while the audience go, did Clive Myrie just say that? And then Yeah, I've heard the trailers for that. It sounds like a very interesting pod, Kieran.
Yes, yeah, it's got an awful lot of hard work's gone into it.
Yeah.
Took a few hours. I think I've got very much a bit part, and rightly so.
I imagine it must have been a nightmare for compliance and legal checking the facts on that. Ian Frampton has our next question, Kieran. And it's a very interesting one, and one that didn't occur to me. So, as you know, these are the sort of questions that I particularly like. And Ian Frampton says, I have a question regarding the fines Reading owner Dai Yonga has received. What obligation does he actually have to pay them? Is there a scenario where he just adds them to the price of the club?
Well, everybody that gets involved in football effectively has a contract with the football authorities. So if you're an owner and you have submitted an owners and directors test, that also means if you go to the EFL handbook that you are obliged to comply with all of the EFL rules, including being put upon a charge for whatever the offence happens to be. So therefore, he has to pay them by the due date. If a failure to do so would result in a breach of the commission, which has investigated his activities, and therefore he could be subject to a follow-up fine. It's exactly the same as not paying a fine for doing something on it sort of at a domestic level. If you go to a local court and you're sanctioned and you fail to comply, then you can be effectively fined twice. It's a bit like not paying your VAT return on time, or not submitting a VAT return on time. If you don't pay the fine there, you'll have to pay another one in due course.
When push to come, if he does refuse to pay, or if a club owner does refuse to pay them, in the end, it will be the club that's sanctioned, would it not, with points deductions rather than the owner himself?
I don't think this would ever get as far as points deductions.
Right. Okay. Right.
But you could see a scenario. For example, just before the show was recorded, something came through relating to Nottingham Forest, and their social media posts at Nottingham Forest were fined £750,000 by the Football Association for making allegations about referees. You can disagree with the referee's decision, and you talk to every referee that you've ever met, they'll say, "God, yeah, I'm absolutely messed up on that one." No referee will ever claim to be perfect, because no footballer is perfect, and no broadcaster is perfect, and no accountant is perfect. But there's a world of difference between that and some form of Machiavellian plot against individual clubs. So you, by all means, you can appeal these things, but if found guilty, then you would have to comply. And what you would find is, in the case of the Football Association, could they apply to the Premier League? Could the Football Association say to Nottingham Forest, "We're not going to give you your share of FA Cup money this season," for example, until that is fine, or we will subtract it from. So there are various ways that clubs can do this. It's slightly more complicated when dealing with an individual, but I think there would be a range of other sanctions, such as perhaps that club could be banned from attending EFL meetings or FA meetings, which will make things more difficult for them. Yeah.
No disrespect, Kieran, but I really hope Nottingham Forest win their next FA Cup game. It's already reached a stage at Sellers Park when the natural pessimists amongst us don't know what to do, because we can't complain about not winning or not playing well. Well, we weren't brilliant on Saturday, so now the only thing that's clouding our future is the possible Palace Brighton FA Cup final.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous.
So I'm really on full of it's Forest you've got, isn't it?
It is. We played Fulham on Saturday, and we had a big love-in afterwards about the FA Cup quarterfinals. We're as you can imagine.
Of course. Yeah, it never occurs to me that you don't like us as much as we don't like you. I don't know why that. I'll just think, how can anyone not like us? Well, of course we hate them. Oh, yeah, of course you did. This is a paid advertisement for Shopify. I feel like I'm missing out because it seems like everyone is either starting a side hustle or becoming their own boss. And you know what they're hearing a lot? It's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business.
Shopify is the commercial platform revolutionising millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're selling bespoke doggy treats or even yeast extract and cheese-related bakery products, Shopify simplifies selling online and in person so you can successfully grow your business. Covering all your sales channels from a shop-ready POS system to its all-in-one e-commerce platform. Shopify even gets you selling across social media marketplaces like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Full of the industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth, Shopify gives you complete control over your business and your brand without learning new skills in design or coding. And thanks to award-winning help and with an extensive business course library, Shopify is ready to support your success every step of the way.
Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball, all lowercase. So go to shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah.
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Talking of points deductions, Kieran, and we will be discussing that Forest story in greater detail on Thursday's news pod, because it literally only just broke as we started to record. I nearly said as we came on air then, as we started to record. Lee Ashby has this question. Now, it is a question that we put to Nick DeMarco when we interviewed him recently, but I'm aware that not everybody listens to the interview pod, so I think it's valid to ask it again for a wider audience, Kieran. And Lee Ashby says, what do points deductions mean for players' relegation clauses? I'm aware that players can often sign a clause that reduces their salary if the team is relegated. However, if that relegation is caused by a points deduction outside of any control by the player, could they argue that their performance without the deduction would have kept the club up and therefore they should not take the salary deduction?
Yes, I mean, and also I guess this, given the backlog we have of questions, this one could have been asked well before Nick came on the show.
That's true, yes.
But what I would say here is it comes down to the small print, and I cannot summarise this in the lucid way that our very good friend Nick could. But you have to take a look at the contract itself. There are normally what we would refer to as bad faith clauses in contracts that exist to protect all of the parties involved. So if we take a look at the likes of Tiger Woods and Lance Armstrong, when they had misdemeanors, when they were found guilty of behaviour which their sponsors found was damaging to the brand, they were effectively in a position where the sponsors could cut them. Now, I think in the case of Tiger Woods, not many sponsors decided to go down that route, but certainly for Lance Armstrong, he was given the old heave-ho and shown the door marked "Do One" by a few. And he was a very handsomely paid athlete who went down the cheat route. So that has to work both ways. So if a club, if a player signs a contract in good faith, in the belief that I've signed for club X, and I've done my own assessment, and I think there's a 0.01% chance of this club being relegated, so therefore I'm willing to go along with a relegation clause, and it subsequently comes to light that the club had not been honest in terms of its dealings with the player and that player's representatives in terms of potential charges, then you could say, well, that is an example of bad faith, and therefore we've got a break in the contract, and I refuse to accept the relegation clauses embedded into the contract because as far as I'm concerned, we got 62 points in that particular season, which meant we would have finished in such and such a position. And I've walked into a club which has got historic misdemeanours, which have resulted in a significant points deduction and on the back of that relegation. So I guess a lot of this, there will be a lot of people saying, what about Erling Haaland's 9.5-year extension to his contract? And for those people who are wondering if he could do it in the Potteries on a Tuesday night and are relishing that, from what we've heard, there isn't such a clause in his contract. But whether Manchester City could afford to pay his wages in the EFL and whether it will be in the interest of any party for him to be in the Championship, we'll have to wait and see. And of course, Manchester City are innocent until proven otherwise.
Of course. Now, our interview this week, Kieran, which is available on Friday, or it's available tomorrow, Wednesday, if you're a Price of Football Club member, is with a young lad called John Attenborough, who is blind. And he has written a book about his journey around all 42 league clubs in Scotland with his guide dog, Sam. And Motherwell, of course, are one of the clubs that he would have visited. And Dean Matthews has a question about Motherwell. And he says, last year you talked about Motherwell running at a £500,000 loss each year without player sales and or a cup run. And you said the club is majority supporter owned. So my question is, who sets the remit for the board then and the CEO? In most other businesses, if the CEO and the board kept running at that sort of loss, they wouldn't be in a job much longer. Do you think we may be entering a phase in the lower leagues where clubs will have to cut their cloth accordingly?
Well, if you take a look at some other fan-owned clubs, such as Exeter City, that is their approach. In the case of Motherwell, and ironically, Motherwell's accounts came out over the course of this weekend. Motherwell, again, probably lost close to £1.8 million. Yeah, it's 30 grand a week. They did have some player sales, which had assisted them. Motherwell is controlled by the Well Society. The Well Society has lent Motherwell somewhere in the region of, I think, £880,000, which is an outstanding loan. So there will be a budget. At the same time, it comes down to the people who are elected onto the Well Society who will have an impact in terms of they have the ability to appoint the board of directors, as they are the controlling interest of Motherwell Football Club. And remember, we also had Pat Nevin on the show a few months ago, and he was a former CEO of Motherwell. And he said, it's a very challenging job running a club in Scottish football, given the dominance of the two big Glasgow clubs, and trying to be competitive and having to deal with changes is very difficult. So are we entering a phase in the lower leagues where clubs will have to cut their cloth? To an extent, yes, certainly if the club is fan-owned. But I've seen some accounts come out over the course of the last week or two from National League North, National League South, where clubs are losing in excess of £20,000 a week. And people are saying, how on earth can they afford to do that? It comes down to individual benefactors. And is that sustainable? It's sustainable whilst those people still have an interest in the job and until those people's personal circumstances change. So it's a very risky strategy for clubs to be reliant on owners. At the same time, you could argue that is part of football, and it's certainly part of football both in Scotland and England, all around the leagues, because the vast majority of clubs are loss-making and reliant upon a benefactor taking the role of the bank of mum and dad, i.e. nominally lending money a lot of the time in the expectation that money will never be repaid.
So at a fan-owned club then, to extend the question from Dean a little further, at a fan-owned club, who would set the CEO wages then, for example? Because it strikes me that a fan-owned club is probably going to be able to offer a lower salary than elsewhere, which means they can't attract the best people for the job.
It is. I mean, sometimes the role of directors will be done on a sort of a quasi-voluntary basis. In the case of Motherwell, fees relating to services provided by directors cost £3,600 for the season.
For the season. Oh, that's not okay.
So yeah, sometimes you're doing it for things other than financial gain. If we take a look at, for example, there's been a few snarky comments over the weekend about the chair of the independent football regulator role, and that job's paying £130,000 a year. People saying, well, just look at how much Premier League chief executives are being paid, and it is small in comparison. Does this therefore mean that you won't have somebody who is capable? I think that means that you will potentially give the job to somebody who does not prioritise their personal wealth at this stage of their career. It could be that they've made money elsewhere, or it could be that they've actually thought, £130,000 is still a fair salary. It is 3 days a week. That allows me to do other things as well. And they've got a social conscience, and they are concerned about the greater good of football. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not capable of being highly proficient at that job.
Blimey, if the independent regulator's going to have a social conscience as well, Kieran, it's no wonder the Premier League don't want one. It's strange, isn't it, as well? So many people who are against the regulator say, well, it's going to cost too much. We don't know how much it's going to cost, but it's going to cost too much. And yet at the same time, saying, well, they're not paying enough for the regulator. It's like, make your mind up, chaps. I think it's Morecambe, isn't it? I think that their board of directors who have been doing a really good job. They're completely unpaid, I understand.
Yes. And also, I've got huge admiration for the board of directors at Morecambe, because they're quite happy to call out the owners who in theory, can replace them. But I think the owners realise that they need to be able to replace them with somebody or some group of people who will do just as good a job for absolutely nothing, and that they've accepted that it goes with the territory.
Well, here's another one club question, Kieran, this time south of the border, and it comes from Matt Atkins. And Matt says, I'm a lifelong Chesterfield fan. Please can you take a look at the boardroom situation at the club? We've been owned by the Community Trust since 2021, and in the past year or two, some rich businessmen have become involved, helping provide the financial backing to get us to the top of the league. It was announced last year that they're going to be increasing their stake in the club from a minority to 75% of shares. So what are the implications of this for us going forward, which is a practical example of some of the things you've just been talking about, isn't it?
Yes, and I just send some of the best wishes to people at Chesterfield. I think one of the owners is in a very poor health situation, but is hoping to come along to our live show in Rotherham, which has been rescheduled, by the way, so we will be confirming that date. As far as a change of ownership is concerned, it means that your voice can still be heard if the fans group still has a proportion of the shares, and also if the fans group has sort of a golden share, which allows them to contribute towards things at board level. And we've seen this at other clubs. I think Brentford is a fantastic example of having some form of engagement with the club, which can really be positive. And some of the things that we're seeing at Brentford are very, very impressive. So if you've got an owner who has 75% of the shares, the advantage, and if you talk to people at clubs such as Portsmouth and also at Wrexham, they said we were fan-owned, but that set a natural ceiling as far as who is going to bear the losses. So if I'm looking at Chesterfield's accounts, and I've got the accounts here for both 2022 and 2023, Chesterfield's losing £2 million a year. Now, I've been to Chesterfield as an away fan. It's a great away trip, but if you've got crowds of 3, 4, 5, 6,000, whatever it's going to be, you can't expect those people to, between them, find £2 million. So therefore, it does come down to individuals who have got A, the wealth, and B, the desire to financially support the club, to provide some form of funding. Going back to what we've been saying earlier, the vast majority of clubs are loss-making, and therefore they are dependent upon the benevolence of tends to be individuals to allow them to break even. So the implications for the club going forwards is that this does mean that control on the club in terms of setting budgets, in terms of commitments to infrastructure, in terms of commitments to buying players, sacking managers, does effectively get switched to whoever's in charge.
Yeah, there's a frustration there, Kieran, isn't it, for the romance ticks amongst us. We've spoken to a lot of clubs that are either community trust owned, part community trust owned, or fan owned. And we know the natural ceiling, but then you've got a club like Chesterfield, and all it takes for almost instantaneous success is a couple of rich businessmen coming along to put the money in that fans can't. For those people in the game who see fan-owned clubs as a future model, this is a practical example again of how difficult that is.
Yes, and I think there is we've discussed this before, that there is in my view, a natural ceiling as to how far a fan-owned club can go. I don't think you can get much further than League One, because the average losses, as we've established in the Championship, at £376,000 a week, that's simply not feasible. It's amazing that there's enough people willing to, who are successful in their own rights, to be willing to subsidise those losses. It's clearly not possible for a fan-owned club, unless you take the approach which we have seen by one of two clubs. By all means, try your best. Try to get into the playoffs. Try to get promoted. If you get to the Championship, bank the money, and then your ambition is to finish third or fourth bottom each season.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Now, our last question, Kieran, comes from Kieran Simmons. Always nice to have another Kieran on the show, spelt the same way as you, Kieran, as well,
yes.
Which is lovely to know. And I like this question. There's a touch of the chippy about this, and the fact that it comes from a Birmingham fan is neither here nor there, Kieran. I'm not saying that's the relation. You know how much I love that city. But Kieran says, do companies take into consideration the rivals of the team they sponsor? For example, as a Birmingham fan, I'll never buy anything that Muller ever made. In the same way, Kieran, I absolutely point blank refuse to have an American Express card. I just won't have one. You know,
I think it's a two-way conversation, that one.
They are, to be fair, Kieran, they're not knocking my door down to make me have one, but I refuse. I will not have an American. I don't know what Nobo made, but I will not have a Nobo product in my house. I occasionally go to Tesco, Kieran. I'm not having a Tesco carrier bag. Simple as that. So this is a question. I suspect I know the answer, but when you talk about Madrid, Barcelona, for example, or Liverpool, Everton, you think it must be something that they would take into consideration, would they? Oh,
I know Liverpool fans and Manchester City fans when Manchester United was sponsored by Vodafone and Sharp. It was, we're going Sony. We will not. I'm entirely with that. I'm sure there's some really lame gag about when Crystal Palace was sponsored by Virgin that I could crowbar into this, but I'm not going to do that because it's not that type of show.
There's a very good technique, Kieran, when you say I'm not going to say this is what I'm not going to say. That's a very good technique. Yeah, it's one that we use a lot in the writing industry.
Would it be taken into consideration? Well, what you would do is that you would look at the demographics of the people who are likely to consume the product or the service, especially if it's a local product. So if you had if you were one of the Sheffield clubs, if you were one of the clubs in Nottingham or Manchester or all these cities, and you say, well, actually, this is a product which is only going to be consumed in that particular town or city, then you might take into account that alienating 50% of the population is going to do you more harm than good. I go back to way back when, before I went into education, which was a considerable period of time, and we did an investigation into a well-known football club. As you know, I used to work in the insolvency industry, and the conclusion was this club needs to go into administration. And phoned up the bank manager. Said, "This is what I'm planning to put in the report." This is in the pre-mobile phones, pre-email days.
Yeah.
And bank manager says, "Can I meet you and have a discussion about this?" And I thought, "Yeah, that's fine. Do you want me to come to your offices, or do you want to come to ours?" And he says, "Do you mind if I meet you in the pub?" Which was a lost opportunity, because me going to a pub, all of my colleagues going, "Well, why? This is." So I'm there, with my lime and soda, with a straw, of course. It reminds me of this geeky 20-something accountant, and the bank manager says, "I'm worried about alienating the fan base of this club." So it was slightly different, but exactly the same. So we ended up coming up with this scheme where we didn't put the club into administration because the bank manager was genuinely concerned about losing 25-30% of the customer base of his or her customers who happen to support the club. So fan loyalties are something which are taken into consideration, but it does tend to be done on a local basis because you don't get clubs who are universally hated. To the extent that people will go, "Well, I'm not going to buy any of those products." I'm sure you could probably correct me on that.
No, I'm just wondering. There's this part of me that wonders whether that's why Chelsea haven't got a shirt front sponsor. Basically, one of the reasons I love doing this pod, Kieran, is that I know we will get many people on social media telling us exactly the products they don't buy because of their hatred of a local club. It's just occurred to me. Imagine being a Torquay fan, hating Plymouth but loving Pasties for 15 years. You wouldn't have been able to have a Ginsters.
That's not good, is it?
It must have been the best day of your life when Ginsters stopped supporting Plymouth. God, it's a minefield, isn't it? It's a good question. Clearly, the nature of modern business is that clubs will do their research and decide that if there is a proportion in a city that doesn't buy their yoghurt anymore, that's made up for by the fact that there will be fans of Aston Villa who buy in double the amount of yoghurt they used to. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear from experts how actual shirt front sponsorship makes a difference to a brand at that level of football. Whether a League Two club sponsored by a local insurance company, whether that insurance company will actually get more business the following year because of it. So I'm sure there's somebody out there who will be able to tell us. I was hoping, Kieran, the answer would be you, but clearly it's not on your spreadsheet list. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page and everyone who's now joined the brand new Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join the club too and get ad-free listening and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes, early access to interviews, all sorts of stuff, then go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on X, Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our excellent books or even a Price of Football t-shirt, it's back. It's just in 2 days' time the t-shirt's back. You can find all the details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with our regular news pod, including more details on that big Nottingham Forest story. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Just to reiterate what I was talking about earlier, we are coming to Rotherham. The date has been changed to Monday, the 28th of April. Apologies if it's messing any people around. That was totally down to me. I have to take 100% responsibility for that. There's various ways you can support the show, and it's great to have the face-to-face chats on Zoom that with members of the club. It's really good fun and also be able to answer questions on the fly. Keeps me on my toes, which does me no harm whatsoever. And there's another way that you can support the show, and that's to give us a review. We've not had a review for a while. The Baroness checks them for me, or perhaps she just tells me about the nice ones. She knows what a sensitive flower I'm not. But if you give us a review, doesn't matter by all accounts, according to producer Guy, what you say. So you can even say you would rather have the show presented by Robert De Niro and Harry Redknapp. And I think that would be a fascinating meeting of minds.
Yeah. I'm not sure we could afford that one. That's two big hitters there, isn't it? Be a cracker though. I wonder if we could persuade Harry Redknapp to do it in his car with his elbow lit, which is my abiding image of him on transfer deadline day. It's basically. I always suggested that perhaps one day he could get a left-hand drive car, just to really confuse the journalists waiting for him to come out of the training ground. I'd listen to that one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.